Hello, and welcome to the Energy and Consciousness Summit. I'm Sheila Derfler, your host, and today I have with me Khalida Sae Kani, and Khalida is a TRE certification trainer for Asia. And welcome, Khalida, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you for the invitation. I'd like to talk a little bit about myself and TRE first. My name is Khalida Sae. You can call me either Khalida or Sae, whichever is fine. TRE stands for Tension and Trauma Releasing Exercise, developed by Dr. David Verselli, based in Arizona in the USA. I just want to talk a little bit about how I found out about TRE and why I was drawn to it. Actually, before I became involved in TRE, I was working in Asia as a disaster management specialist for about 15 years. So I've been to many disaster-affected countries, post-war zone, in developing countries in Asia. So I've been to many like tsunami affected, earthquake affected, post-war. You see thousands of people traumatized. And I was a specialist, but I'm not a psychologist or doctor or anything. I was just more like a logistician. I was like providing tents and providing food and, that kind of response work. And I have seen thousands of people affected by trauma. And 10 years later, I go back to the same countries. Whole cities being rebuilt wonderfully. Boxes are built, but the people inside are still so heavily traumatized. And that is passing on to generations, that the next generation being affected. You see, for example, East Timor, it's quite relevant to Australia, very close. I was in East Timor just after independence. This is the 20th year of the independence. So in 20 years, the country's been built, more developed, more resources, but the woundedness in their heart and soul since the generations ago, it's still affecting to current day. The more domestic violence, there are more issues with youth and all that kind of thing. It's because of the trauma. Within international aid, I discovered that the donors are willing to give money to something quantifiable, like 40,000 tents and 200 schools been built. Is this something you can count on? But they are not really willing to give money to a care for their soul and heart because it is not countable. You don't know the impact. You cannot see the progress because the trauma healing would take over decades. So I was in those, disaster affected area and then see the huge gap, the trauma healing. And I was thinking, well, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, nothing I can do about it. But in 2011, when the Great Eastern Earthquake hit Japan, I was in Indonesia at the time, I realized I had to go back to my own country to serve. So I came back and started working, the reconstruction of the tsunami affected area. And that's the first time Dr. Verselli visited Japan and spread TRE then. And he also have a very similar background to me. He was a social worker and working in the Middle East for a long time. And he also felt like the thousands of people traumatized and this conventional one-to-one therapy wouldn't work. And he believed that if human being doesn't have a potential or capacity to overcome trauma, we were extinct thousands of years ago as a species. So we must have some kind of mechanism to overcome trauma. Universally, like it doesn't matter what education, what race, what gender, what age, we should all have that mechanism. And that's how he discovered our physical response to trauma and how to overcome it. So when I found out about it in Japan in 2011, I thought, wow, this is like my missing piece in my humanitarian work. And TRE can be served one-to-one therapeutic clinical setting. Also, we can do it in the group. because a lot of trauma healing is very effective when we have this bonding with another people, another human being, because we as a mammal, we cannot live alone. We need connection. So the losing a connection is devastating to our physiology. So we can do TRE in the group, we can do TRE one-to-one. We don't need much language explanation, education. It's just a very simple exercise, and we can awaken our embedded trauma healing mechanism. The title is tension release, tension and trauma releasing, but I would say trauma can become asset in our life to grow, for our transformation as a human being and as a soul. So I wouldn't really say releasing. It's like, okay, get rid of it. Mm-hmm. It's more like, how can we integrate that experience in our being, and the letting go of those severe physiological response, which create a lot of physical suffering and mental suffering to us, and yet create the space for us to be able to look the incident from a little bit from the distance, and to be able to integrate the whole experience and grow. That's how I see this method is effective. Sorry, I'm talking so much because I'm very excited to talk about it.
Yes, that's great.
That's my background, and that's how I found out TRE.
And you explained it so well. And it is interesting that, we do have built into our, into the genius of our human bodies, this mechanism that's been suppressed through enculturation, mm-hmm. that children do this, animals do this, exactly. Even ancestrally, people have used shaking as a way to release trauma. And we even, as much as we suppress the urge, we have so many sayings, at least in English, shake it off, right? Like, but then we also have one that counters that, suck it up. I find it really interesting that this was a mechanism that we were given in the divine design of these human bodies, and we've forgotten it. And that all we have to do is retrain and teach our body how to use this beautiful mechanism for our own healing.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, in many cultures, like shaking is some kind of taboo. And sometimes in the more primitive societies, it's connected to shamanism and then the black magic and, all this dark thing. So people are afraid of shaking. If you start involuntarily shaking, you think there's something wrong with you. The doctor will say, can give you a shot because, you got to stop that shaking thing. It's abnormal. This is like very conditioned belief, like shaking is not a good sign. It's actually opposite. Of course, there are a lot of causes that create shaking, and not all the shaking the same, but we have the mechanism to be able to release that excess produced cortisol and adrenaline in our body through shaking.
Right. And I think it's also important to note that the trauma, an event is neutral, but it's if we don't, our interpretation of it and not releasing the stuck energy is how it impedes us in our lives.
Yeah. So when we say trauma, some people think, oh, nothing huge happened in our life, like we are not traumatized. It doesn't have to be the tsunami or disaster. It's actually very small incident can create traumatic response in our body. I give you an example. For example, when you're 2 years old and you're chased by a dog and you're cornered and you cannot run away and you cannot fight the dog, your physiology, your body will be in this freeze mode. You completely freeze yourself. That's the only way to protect yourself at the time, right? You're 2-year-old, you can't remember that incident vividly, but that response still stays in your body, this frozenness. So when you grow up, you hear the dog barking. For adult you, it's no big deal, but your body start feeling cold, or you start feeling a little bit nervous, like it's a little dog, like what is this? You don't know, your neocortex can't figure it out, but your body remember that frozen moment when you're 2 years old. Right? So we have like thousands of those responses in our body, and it can be triggered by a small thing in our life, and we don't know, right? And even the head doesn't detect it, doesn't recognize it, but your body responding it each time. So all this tension pattern in your body is always have some kind of history in the past, right? It's a layered. So when we do TRE, it's not a psychological intervention. This is completely body-based work. So you don't necessarily remember all these incidents which cause that tension pattern. But every time you shake, something is released, some pattern is changed, and your neurological pattern is rewired, right? That's really important, because if your neurological pattern is still there, each time the trigger happens, your body would tense up. So you go to the massage, you get a massage, and then you feel better for a day or two. But the causes are still still the same. So next time you get triggered, you have the same tension pattern, the same area get really tightened and painful, right? So I'm not really saying this external thing wouldn't work, because I also love massage and always receive that, But at the same time, noticing that, okay, something is really triggering me to this tension pattern. I have to retrain our nervous system not to respond that way. And so far, there aren't many tools that actually work from that level, really unlocking that tension pattern, which is caused by the various little traumas in life, and then retrain our nervous system not to respond to that. See, so the combination of TRE with all other modality can be very effective. Like, for example, meditation. I also teach meditation. A lot of people say, oh, I just sit and then think. I can't stop thinking, right? Because you're always on this hyperarousal. A lot of people have a lot of tension, and then thinking, and then the next thing, and planning, and your sympathetic nervous system is always activated. And I don't have time to do 90 minutes yoga and shavasana to get there. TRE, if you do the shake for 15 minutes, you can feel so deeply relaxed. Of course, subject to, individuality, but generally speaking, your nervous system will come down from sympathetic down to parasympathetic, this deep resting mode through TRE. And so you feel really relaxed. After 15 minutes of shaking, either you can sleep really well, or you can sit and meditate, or you can have a very peaceful conversation with your spouse. So if you learn how to shake, I say well in inverted comma, because you should learn TRE properly from the certified provider to start with. But once you master that, you can use this tool rest of your life. You can really use it in any situation. Every time you feel the nervousness or tension, your body starts shaking, and you can let it happen without worrying about anything. I used to fly a lot, not nowadays, but I really don't like flying in a turbulence, because I witnessed the plane crash in Indonesia before. So every time the plane starts shaking a little bit, I feel really charged. I feel like, oh my God. So I put the blanket over my legs, and then I start shaking. I can switch on and off anytime I want. So that I'm shaking a little bit throughout the turbulence, When the plane lands, I feel completely relaxed and grounded. If I don't, all this produced adrenaline and cortisol in my body will really exhaust me. You know, it will affect me like a day or two after my landing. So this is how I could use TRE. Also, when I have a fight with my boyfriend over the phone, I'm talking, I feel like, okay, charge is coming. And then I just shake my leg while I'm talking. And little by little, releasing those tension in my body so I can stay calm and grounded to talk. So there are many ways. It's not like it just has to be massive therapeutic intervention. It's just like a day-to-day thing. You can use it as a part of your self-regulation.
Right, right. Well, gosh, in that little segment, I had like 10 more questions to ask you. So the one that came last was with the leg shaking while you're talking on the phone, right? Look at how many children shake their leg like at the dinner table or at school and get scolded for it.
Exactly.
Like when I was growing up, I had a neighbor who incessantly, he was an older, like he was a teenage boy. And I remember, because I was only like 12 and he was in high school. And I remember his mom always, making comments about him shaking his leg. Like, it was just a thing that he did. So, just so interesting. And then
that's fine. The children are quite hyperactivated in modern life. They need to shake.
Yeah. And then the other thing is when you were talking about how you're a meditation teacher, what came to my mind was there are people that have significant trauma in their past. And one of the reasons why some people find meditation difficult or challenging, or they develop beliefs like, oh, I'm a horrible meditator, I can't meditate, it doesn't work for me, is because the way trauma can affect some people, going into that quiet space or even closing their eyes and feeling safe.
Right.
Like they just don't feel safe meditating. So when you were talking about how you do both, it seems like for people who are already meditating, that TRE could be an additional thing to bring into their lives, and then that helps them go deeper into their meditations.
Absolutely, absolutely. The people who have a difficulty meditating or closing their eyes, the process of meditation is put you into this space to feel yourself, right? You have to feel your body. You have to feel your breath. You have to feel your whatever the emotions that come up within yourself. And this is really frightening for the people who have a lot of very severe unresolved trauma. It will activate them immediately because they don't feel safe within their own body. That's the whole concept of the trauma, right? So you're constantly looking the stimulation outside of yourself, so you don't have to feel this unresolved trauma and response in the body. So of course it is frightening and unsettling, and then you feel like uncomfortable and sometimes freaks out, That's why when I see people like that, I don't recommend them to do a closed eyes sitting meditation, because that's only activate them more, So I sometimes teach active meditation using our body, dance meditation, things like that, or doing TRE, of course, so releasing that energy first. It might take time, over a few months, but I would say over a few months, they will feel much better, to feel within their body, feel settled in their body, and be friend with their body. Because each time this impact, the traumatic impact, happened to our body, it create those frozen segments in our body. And then it dissociate itself from our main energy source. So we have a lot of pocket of dissociated self within us, a separation within us. And that's reflect to the outer world, the relationship with other people. You know why relationship is always so difficult? Because within ourselves it's not integrated. Within ourselves is a lot of broken and separated, dissociated pieces that we are not recognizing, we are not allowing, forgetting, and forgiving, accepting. So all these parts need to be integrated to be whole. And TRE is like a, red thread sewing together. So we bring the dissociated part of ourselves together, recognize it, accept it, integrate it, and become whole again.
And that brings in some of the conversations I've had in the summit with people who, about inner work or shamanism. It's, this idea that trauma creates fragmentation, and that integrating back, regardless of what tool people use, that the key to wholeness is integrating back these parts that have been fragmented. And one of the things I loved in one of the conversations was with a biofield tuner, and she was saying that the parts they're still in your field. They don't go far. So it's not this concept of the hopeless concept of the part's gone forever, like you've been traumatized and now you'll never be whole, you're always going to be damaged, right? It's no, it didn't go far. It's just a matter of the right tool, bringing it home.
Exactly. I really feel for people that would suffer from the trauma response, panic attack, and anxiety, depression. It is a very physiological symptom, and it's when that's happening, it's just so hard. You can't think of anything but just like, I want to stop it all. I feel for them. And a lot of spiritual thinking, teaching, meditation, or the psychological intervention is helpful, but people only have a space to go into that place when they physically feel safe. They can breathe, they can sleep, they can eat. This basic survival alert has to be turned off in order to get to the next level, to really understand and grasp what it means to them, right? So that's why I really appreciate TRE, because it's very fast, and then it's really create the very physiological tension. You can feel the release, you can feel relaxation, you can sleep better, all these buttons that you had in your mind every time someone says something, you're responding and reacting. It's awful. But that it's a little by little, it's disappearing, those buttons. Like, oh, am I not supposed to respond what she said just now? 3 weeks ago, I used to be reacting to that, but I don't feel that way. Why? A lot of clients say, your mind still think you should be angry, but you don't feel anger. Right? So that's how naturally happening in your physiology. Your mind will catch up later. Your body respond first.
Yeah. Now, another thing that you brought up earlier that I just want to come back to is, I think for me, this was key in my healing, was to understand years ago, when I finally found a functional medicine, she was a medical doctor who did functional medicine. And so the first thing she did was do blood tests, because she suspected I had post-traumatic stress disorder. So she said, let's do a blood test to test your cortisol levels. Now, at that time, I think I was 50, maybe 49. And not one functional medicine person, naturopath, nobody had ever thought to do that for me. Like to do the right kind of blood test to test for cortisol. And when she explained to me the role cortisol plays, it was like light bulbs going off. she explained how the cortisol levels were affecting my sleep. So my whole life, I would often wake up at 2 a.m. It was like I could literally look at the clock and it would be 2 a.m. And if it wasn't 2 a.m., then it'd be 3 a.m. and 1 a.m. And I used to always, look at like the Chinese medicine clock to see what it meant with organs, but I never got the key of the cortisol piece. So can you talk a little bit more about some of the signs and symptoms people might be having that's indicative of like long-term high cortisol?
Definitely hypervigilant. That's one of the thing. Like you said, you always wake up in the same time, middle of the night, or sometimes you hear the clock ticking the particular time of the night. My client said he had this CD player to start turning CD at 6 a.m. or whatever the time he set. Even before, it's like few seconds before that the CD start, he wake up because he's so vigilant to the sound. I mean, this is definitely the sign. Also the digestion problem, the very constant constipation, diarrhea pattern. That's also the case. Emotional reactivity, of course. There are so many things that, severe pain, like joints in the shoulder, or this kind of prolonged pain in our bodies. This is all to do with cortisol and stress. Yeah. So back pain is typically one of the things TRE is very effective is the prolonged back pain as well.
Yeah. I had all those symptoms for my whole life.
Yeah. So your adrenal gland is constantly producing cortisol, overworked, right? So in the conventional Western medicine, if you do those tests, that the figure doesn't really come up. But in the Chinese medicine, we always said, oh, your adrenal gland is overused, burnt out. And that's a symptom. You are under constant, minor but constant stress. And then your amygdala is activated. That gives a message to the adrenal gland to produce the stress hormone. So that's how it is. It's constantly like going on and on and on.
And then just from what you said, it's your body and your brain together. It's the amygdala. It's probably also the vagus nerve. It's the adrenal glands. It's all the hormones. So
it's very purely physiological, right? Because of those physiological response in our body, our mind will decide this is a dangerous situation. We got to do something about it. The story come up later. So if you try to rewrite the story, reframe the story without sorting out our physiological response, you think you've done it, but then a few months later, same storyline come back, same narrative come back. You say, I thought you already sorted out that one. It still comes back because your physical response is the same. We have to stop this response first and then reframe our narratives. Then the transformation happens very smoothly. I also give counseling piece as well as a part of this whole, the therapeutic package. But I never go to the story first. I don't even hear their story because it is really filtered through their physiological response. So let's work on the body first. And then, like I said earlier, they're no longer angry. Physically, they don't feel that anger, but their psychological mind think they should be angry. Now, this resonance, then I start working with their psychological piece too, to align with the physiological response and our conditioned psychological framework.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah. Well, and everything that you've said is what I figured out the hard way on my journey. So hopefully everything you have just shared will land for some people that maybe are are missing that piece that took me like 30 years to figure out. So yeah, I'm so glad you're here. Um, so one of the things that we talked about before, like when we first met, you were talking about the heart, the aspect of the heart and how trauma affects the heart. And I would love for you to speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, heart, we have a physical heart and we have this emotional heart, right? And I think to um, interrelated the physical heart, and there is a heart energy, we call it heart chakra and so on. When we are affected by trauma, our physical body contract. And then our heart area, this area, the chest area also contract because our diaphragm is contracting, our breath is very shallow. Therefore, this whole heart area is contracting as well, right? This is a physical restrictions. But then at the same time, on this energetic layer, we are also closing in. We don't really feel like opening up because opening up is scary. You know, opening heart is scary. We have to feel vulnerable. We have to take some risk. You know, we can only open our heart if we feel really safe to do so. Right? When we are really affected by trauma, our first response is how to protect ourselves, how to defend ourselves without further hurt. So only way is close our heart. And a lot of people live in a traumatic life for years, closing their heart. And the only thing they do is select the pieces that they feel it's okay, it's safe. So really limit their options in life. You know, your life becoming smaller and smaller as you try to be more safe. Actually, this filter, what you judge safe or unsafe, is very, very subjective from the amygdala's perspective. And amygdala's perspective based on your archive, the history, what you have experienced before. It doesn't necessarily real, right? So imagine if your oversensitive amygdala is calming down and actually you realize, actually the world is not as bad as I thought. People are not as nasty as I thought. Maybe they're not going to hurt me as I thought. So that the physiological, this hyper alerted system calming down, you create the space in your heart. You can start opening up little by little. You can breathe better. You can relax your psoas muscle, therefore your diaphragm start loosening up. You can breathe deeper. Oh my God, I can breathe. Slowly, also energetic heart space start opening up as well. Again, you don't have to do it like now, you know. As you feel safer, your heart will naturally opening up. And I think this is what we are as a species. We are meant to connect with other people. We are meant to love each other. We are meant to love the beauty, the nature. You know, that's what we are made of. But because of this impact from trauma, this restriction happening, this is a very animal mode instead of human mode. I think human being, I wouldn't say in a special, in a kind of arrogant way, but we have our consciousness, which is a very different place from the normal animals are. You know, animal is survival is a main theme. I think for human being, survival is of course important, but I think it's about evolution. We, with our consciousness expansion, this is what we are made of. That's what we want to be doing from our soul. That's my belief system, but that's how I feel. So, you know, trauma healing, in my view, it's not about going back to the state before trauma happened, just so that you're safe and survived. You know, it's for me, trauma healing is about expansion and evolution in your human beingness. Then you see it's post-traumatic growth. It's a completely different narratives from conventional trauma healing. Let's eliminate the problematic symptom and go back to where you were.
Right.
And I think that this heart capacity is like an indicator for me. The person is started to moving into the post-traumatic growth stage.
Yep. Yeah. Beautifully put. Beautifully put. Because I think in some traditions, which, you know, many people knew on a spiritual path, can find difficulty with the concept that, you know, our soul chose before we came in. Our soul chose our parents. These particular circumstances we were born into for its evolution. And I was first introduced to that concept in college. I think I was 18 when I met a friend who was really into mysticism and Chinese medicine, and I remember it just being like so different from my Catholic upbringing, but it really resonated. It was very strange that I let that concept in and started to play with it. And so it's like when we step out of this notion that trauma is bad, that we were robbed of a good life because of these external circumstances, when we can kind of play with this notion that, you know, we chose this to grow our soul, we chose this to evolve our consciousness, and whatever our journey, however our journey played out, it's a transformation game, right? It's that's what we're here for.
Yeah, it's true, but at the same time, I feel for people that who are suffering physically, emotionally so much right now cannot think that way yet.
Yep.
Right?
Because when you're in it, you're in it, right?
Exactly. So I don't want to lose compassion for the people who are there. And my work is really dealing with people who are there, you know, but me having that perspective in the long term where this soul is leading to, I don't lose hope, you
Right.
know.
Right.
We all individual had this capacity to overcome
Right.
and evolve.
Well, and
In whatever the time frame is up to them.
I can see how having that perspective, though, helps you be present and not get overwhelmed by what you're witnessing with your humanitarian work. Because, you know, whether like I had done social work when I was first out of college, and because I hadn't healed enough of my own trauma, a lot of what I was witnessing was re-traumatizing me. And I wanted to help. I wanted to be of service, but it was too much. It was too much for my system. I couldn't deal with the horrors I was witnessing. So yeah, so I think if people, because many people want to serve, they want to give, and they might be giving from a place of depletion even. So.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, since I was young, I wanted to change the world, you know, so I worked in those massive, you know, humanitarian world for many, many years. But then at the end, I also got a burnt down, like I burnt out. I couldn't do that kind of work anymore, you know? And I realized like I wanted to change the outer world. It wasn't working. We are in a massive system, you know, United Nations and the government and that. And I was alone, like struggling. Nothing could be different from that perspective. So then I started having my inner journey and landed in TRE and landed in those life coaching and this. It's a completely different, almost like it's my past life now. You know, it's so different, completely outworld, and then now it's its inner world. And I think there is this meeting point. I'm still working with my, ex-colleagues and people in developing countries. I'm teaching them free the TRE, and then train them to be able to teach their people. And that's my contribution in a more sustainable way, how human life can be better. I don't deny or criticize making houses or schools. It's also needed. But I've done that part, and I'm finding my own way to create that harmony within myself and peace within myself. And then hopefully that will reflecting the people that I relate to, clients, families, friends, all that in the society.
Yep. Yeah, because even at the very beginning of your conversation, when you were talking about just how natural disasters and war devastates people and then the generations to come after, and that the aid focuses on building boxes, right? It was also just a metaphor for us as human beings, that that what's valued by the culture is the external, having your external resources, checking the boxes of life, the nice house, the kids, but if you haven't taken care of that traumatized being, inside you, that it's all empty, right? And then the generations that come after you, even if you leave them a fortune, they're going to inherit the trauma, right? The trauma patterns, and then the genetic changes that happen from having unresolved trauma in your body. Those genetic changes that occur get handed down. So,
and this is such a whole pandemic situation since last year. I mean, this is definitely, it's a generational trauma,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so important for us to breathe fresh air, not our own, breath in the mask. And so many clients of mine have such a restricted diaphragm because they wear masks all day and they forget to breathe. They're so used to such a shallow breathing. Even they take their mask off, they can't breathe deep anymore. Right. And that's definitely affecting their brain, their alertness, right? Physiologically, it's so impacted. It's so important to breathe properly, even more than before. Yeah. And then secondly, this lockdown, isolation. We are supposed to live in the tribe. That's why, I don't know if you're familiar with polyvagal theory, but we have this nervous system called the ventral vagal nervous system. This is the higher mammal developed in order to connect with other guys in the same tribe. Which control our tone of voice, facial expression. So without verbal communication, we can understand each other, have a bonding. The mother and baby connects through the ventral vagal. We need that connection in order to survive, and this whole lockdown situation is basically cutting our vital web of our life. So even online, it's better than nothing. Of course, the real touch is better, but to keep seeking out the connection and meeting people and feel you're connected, that is so important to keep our nervous system running more healthily. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because I even noticed with my friends that I've checked in with over the last few months that for some of them, and this is the way I used to be when I was still stuck in the post-traumatic stress disorder and acting out all those patterns in my life, that when we were experiencing adversity, everything going wrong in our life, so whether that's the current situation or even just in your own life, everything feeling like it's falling apart, that that a trauma response that people don't act, that they're doing, that they're not aware is coming from trauma, is that they further isolate themselves.
Exactly.
And they literally push away the people who could be helping them.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and I cannot imagine this level of isolation is happening in the society right now, or this, single mom and people who lost the job, and in the city dwellers, like they don't have families nearby. I cannot imagine with this lockdown what it's like, you know. Um, but luckily we have internet and we have online tool now. So I have been offering the group TRE as well, online group TRE.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, so I've done a big class, like more than 70 people from all over the world. If the time zone suits them, join and then shake together. It's nothing big deal. The people who have done TRE before, they can self-regulate at home, but everyone said it's still different from shaking on their own, even though online,
Right.
even though you don't see them, but I'm leading through my voice and remind them that they are part of this big collective energy together. Tonight we are shaking and they feel it. And their shaking pattern changes. They have a different experience from when they're shaking on their own. So our consciousness connect and detect that they're not alone. They connect. Sometimes I ask them to bring their pet on their belly, or little babies on the belly. This neurological connection with other being, it makes us feel safe and more grounded. And that's create the healing. Yeah. So let's connect more.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you, Sai. This has been such a great conversation with so many insights. And I love the work that you do. I love how it came from, an earlier time in your life, from the desire to make a difference with humanitarian work, and that you found a way to do it in a way that gave back to you, so that you could then give more. So that was powerful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So can you just let people know where they can find you?
Okay, so I think under this video, there is my link to my website. And I do online courses, online sessions, online group sessions. If you can find a number of people want to shake together with me, I can organize a tailor whatever you need. Sorry, I don't have a free gift thing. I'm not really tuned into all this new technology aspect of my work. Still quite analog person. But I have my website. There's a contact, and then my background all written there in English. So if you want to have I offer 30 minutes free consultation before we do any work together. So just contact me if you feel like this is something you want to do.
That's great. That's a free gift, Sai. That's all right. Well, thank you. Thank you for being
Thank you so
here.
much for this opportunity. It's been really lovely to speak to you from this spiritual, energetic consciousness perspective. TRE should also stepping into exploring this part as well, not just clinical.
Yeah. 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 Well, it is a tool that if people are on that journey, it's going to assist them on that journey, right? And if people aren't quite there yet, it's going to help them where they're at. So I love that it's a tool that can help people regardless of where they are. It's not necessarily a spiritual tool, but it's also not a spiritual tool. So
Yeah, can be used in many ways. It's all start from our body, our vehicle.
yep. Yep. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
So I hope everyone enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for listening and joining in. And I will look forward to hearing any comments or shares, insights that you had from this conversation. You can share it in the Facebook group. And I look forward to seeing you all in our next interview. So thank you and take care.